Hi, this is Runa, and you're listening to the Changemakers podcast, where we share tips, insight, tools, and stories from other changemakers designed to motivate you to become the change you want to see in your world. Make sure you join our Changemakers community at runamagnus.com/podcast. And now, this is your time to sit back, relax, and enjoy. Okay, peeps. Our next guest is a special one, a special friend of mine, actually. Someone that I have never met in person, but she means the world to me. I'm talking about Bev Hancock. She is the masterclass facilitator, strategist, speaker, coach. And she is the woman behind the concept called Every Conversation Matters. Now, Bev is one of our patron for the Changemakers No More Boxes movement. And in this episode, Bev shares with us very simple strategy that can change your life. Yes, it can change your life. Believe me. I've tried it myself, and I know this is something that is a simple thing, but at the same time, an effective thing. Bev is coming to me all the way from South Africa, sharing her very insightful nuggets about communication and how we can change our world by changing our language. Here you go. Meet Bev Hancock. Wonderful to have you here as our guest at the Changemakers podcast, Bev Hancock. Welcome.
Thank you, Runa. So lovely.
All the way from South Africa. Get out of here. Oh, gosh. I know, Bev, what you've been doing is so profound, because like I've had this conversation with so many of our guests around how important it is to have deep conversations, to open up for the boxes, open up for understanding, open up for basically, I think it always goes down to open up for something we're basically all the same, although we're all different. And so I was so thrilled to hear about your system and what you're doing in not only South Africa, because I believe you're going global.
Yes, it's actually been an extraordinary journey over the last few years. And I think what brought me to conversations was, having worked in leadership for such a long time, I couldn't help feeling that we'd made things very heavy. We were looking at heavy leadership systems, heavy leadership models. And when it actually comes down to it, the one thing that leaders do every day is have conversations, whether it is with clients, whether it is with staff, whether it's colleagues. It basically is the oil that basically takes us through the day. And I think just thinking about that, and that the fact that we needed to lighten up leadership, I was very privileged to work, she's just passed on, probably one of the leading experts in conversational intelligence. And I think that's where my aha kind of stepped in and said, wow, this is absolutely fantastic. So my journey from there was quite an interesting one, because I think I come from a background of integral leadership where everything has to be connected. And bringing conversations into this for me was incredibly powerful. And I think it came down to having studied some of the greats like Susan Scott on the fierce conversations, looking at crucial conversations. I actually came to the realization that every conversation matters. If we're going to unpack those boxes, we have to be prepared to go everywhere.
Yeah. And what do you think is in your work and in your experience, what do you feel is really stopping us from having those conversations and understanding that every conversation is important?
I think maybe it comes down to one very simple word, and that's mindfulness.
Yeah.
You know, I was studying the whole concept of mindfulness, and I'd always learned mindfulness from an Eastern perspective. And I've recently been reading Ellen Langer's book, and she talks about mindfulness from a more Western perspective, which is really essentially noticing, being present in every action that you do.
Mm.
And I think this perhaps was the one thing that we don't do. We take conversation for granted. We don't approach it with a mindful, conscious approach that helps us think about not only what we're saying, but how we're saying it. Because those conversations, and this is what I learned from the conversational intelligence, it goes right down to a biological level. We have the ability to build the most incredible relationships, the most incredible trust, the most incredible levels of accountability and commitment through the quality of the conversations that we have. So I think it's about becoming very mindful and very conscious about the how we have the conversation and what are we actually creating when we have that conversation.
Yeah, what are we actually creating? And I mean, that is just such a profound, good question to think about, because if we're not mindful, we are creating the same thing that we created in our last conversation and the conversation before that and the conversation before that. So if we're not mindful about it, then nothing is basically going to change for us.
Absolutely. And I think it brings me on to another concept, and we've spoken about this. With leadership being so heavy, I always look for lightness. So I love words like dancing and magic and presence and in the moment. And I've developed a concept called conversational magic, and it comes from a profound moment I had on Facebook, believe it or not, when I saw the word abracadabra. And do you know what the word abracadabra actually means?
Tell me.
It means when I speak, I create.
Oh, I love that. When I speak,
isn't that
great? Oh, wow.
And I think that's
ick.
So that was perhaps my next big moment, because so much of the work that I've done in the past has been around vision, about creating your future, about seeing your future. The work that we've done on branding, how do you see your brand come to life? And it really made me realize just the power that absolutely everything that we say has. And when we think about it as magic, your ability to be able to speak your future into existence is something that really shifts the paradigm. Because I think a lot of people feel that with the current political, gender, I mean, all of the boxes that we talk about, that somehow somebody else is in control of our lives. And conversational magic just brought it right home for me and said, actually, if we shift our language, we will be able to create the future that we want. We will be able to create the lifestyle, the environment, the relationships. I mean, isn't that just so incredibly powerful?
It is so powerful. I so agree with you, because the neuroscience tells us as well that every feeling that we create, whether it's a feeling of a memory, that past memory, present thing that is happening, or going into the future and predicting what it is that we want to see in the future, it creates the same biological effect on us. So what you're saying, being able to use language in a way that it predicts and in the way that it creates your future. And I get goosebumps when I think about people doing that in a way that they're not taking the present with them, or at least not the present, the past memories or the past thing that was not working for them. They're not filling the future with that. They're filling it with being more mindful of what it is that I want to bring into the future.
That's right. I mean, it's almost like you can look at your future and recognize the triggers. The neuroscience for me was also perhaps my next moment, that I really realized that you're dealing with not only emotion, not only thought, you're dealing with biology as well. Yeah. So if you have a negative conversation, which I call a red conversation, you actually shut people down, and you get the exact opposite effect that you're looking for by the tone that you use, by the words that you use, the body language that you use. And if we're going to have these meaningful, deep conversations that allow us to deal with some issues that, let's face it, are not easy. I mean, talking around gender, talking around race, talking around the stuff that is very personal to us can sometimes be a difficult conversation. From a neuroscience point of view, if you focus on generating a positive chemical response. You can have those tough conversations in a way that actually make people feel safe. So it gives you that sense of psychological safety.
Yeah.
It makes them feel that it's a place for them to grow. You grow trust. People then become more committed, and then the conversation opens. So much of what we're doing at the moment is polarized conversations where we are literally forcing people into one box or another. And in doing that, from a purely biological point of view, we're actually shutting them down. And I think this is the power for me of conversational intelligence and that conversational magic, which really just is perhaps a better word for me, to be able to say, how can we really look at our future from a global future to our community conversations, our family conversations, our work conversations, and then perhaps even more importantly, the conversations that we're having with ourselves, because it's those conversations that are just so incredibly powerful.
Oh, yeah. And when that little monkey brain starts to fool around with us. Yeah. So, I mean, Bev, what you're doing is so profoundly important. And it's so, I mean, you're one of our very dear patrons for the No More Boxes movement. So we're so grateful for everything that you're doing in the world to create those magical conversations. Are you up for sharing with us what has this observation, what has it given you personally back?
I think for me it's been life-changing because I'm a very strong woman. I love your boxes where you talk about the male energy, female energy. Mm-hmm. It has given me the ability to be very conscious of my inner conversation and how that is impacting the people that I'm with. Because when you are quite strong, and I wouldn't say forceful, I wouldn't describe myself as forceful, but I am very, very energetic about what I do. Yeah. I sometimes am not always aware of the impact of my words on the people that I'm working with. So this whole process has really made me so much more conscious. I think the word notice for me is a big one. I'm noticing a lot more about my own space. And just in my inner conversation, I can remember a few months ago, something was really worrying me and I was churning it over and over and over in my brain. And I stopped and I noticed and I took a step back and I just said to myself, Bev, change the conversation. And I went and I re-engineered that internal conversation I was having with somebody else who wasn't even in the room. I felt my whole system just quieten. I became a lot more peaceful. I was able to just step into the moment so that when I actually saw that person in real life, the conversation actually was just so much more positive because I prepared myself mentally for it. So for me, it's been both an inner shift and an outer shift.
I love that. I love that. And just being able to stop and say, change the conversation here. We, the Changemakers, we're at the moment when this is recorded, we are planning the month of May to be the Changemakers Month, International Changemakers Month, under the tagline, May the Change Be With You.
Oh, I love that.
Where we want to empower other change makers worldwide to step up their game and be really the change that they want to see in their world. And one of the things that we are going to be talking about is exactly the language bit of how we can change the world by changing our language.
That's such a true statement, Runa. And if you want to know the big global picture of what this has done for me.
Yes.
Because, I can remember in one of our very, very early conversations, we spoke about me being in South Africa and you were talking to me about going global. For me, this is about changing the world. I wake up every morning and I want to make a difference in every conversation, every relationship. But at the end of the day, I do want to leave this world a better place for our children.
Oh, yeah. I join you on that journey. That's what I do myself. And that's what I would love to see people overall at least wake up, just open up maybe half of the other eye to it. Just so that they see that they can we can all make a difference. We can, in one way or another, we can make a difference into our just local community. We can make a difference in our families, with our friends, with our co-workers. We can be the change. It doesn't have to be starting off with being something so big that you feel that you're overwhelmed. But it's really about those steps. Bev, what would you say for someone who is listening to this and is thinking, gosh, this is so right. I have this negative talk all the time. I'm surrounded by other people who always have a negative talk. I want to change that. I don't know how to change. I don't know where to go to that. But what would you tell someone who is in that footstep?
I've got a very good tool that I use for that. And I've used it quite successfully with both inner conversation and outer conversation. You use what's called the 5-to-1 rule. So for every negative statement that you make, your brain needs 5 positive statements to counteract it. Okay. Because when you say something negative, it releases cortisol into your brain, and that stays in your system for 26 hours. So in order to change that, you need to start thinking of reframing to positive. And if you use the 5-to-1, you say, for every time I say something negative, let me focus consciously on now saying 5 positive things. If you are dealing with people who are negative, I actually did this in a group of people once. They were moaning about absolutely everything, and I couldn't take it anymore. And eventually I said to guys, okay, let's do this. You have to do the 5-to-1 rule. It was the quietest trip I ever took. But for the rest of the holiday together, everybody started saying, oh, you've just said something negative. Now you've got to say 5 positive things. And it became a game. And
yeah,
it was such a beautiful, simple tool that you can literally just use with one hand, 1 finger, 5 fingers. And that's a wonderful place to start.
Oh, I love that. That is so simple. And that's a game. That's like and it triggers your mind to basically reprogram yourself. So it was like delete the old program of negativity and restore it with words that empower you and words that are taking you into the future that you want to create.
That's right.
Yeah. Bev, thanks so much. So where can people go to find more out about you and how they can contact you?
I think the best place to find me is on LinkedIn. If you just put in Bev Hancock, I should come right up. I think my website's under construction at the moment, so don't go there yet. So I think let's connect on LinkedIn. It really is the business place to connect. Yeah. And I would really, really love to engage in the conversation and to see how I can add value to anybody who wants to change their conversation.
Ooh, and I think there are more than 2 or 3 out there. Your inbox at LinkedIn is going to be full. But
that would be wonderful, because it's about connecting and relationship. And that's what conversation is. And maybe to finish off on that, Bruna, social media is about having conversations. It's not about broadcasting. So let's talk to each other rather than at each other.
Yes, I love that. Thank you, Bev. This was so insightful. I'm already so inspired into my day. Thank you so much.
It's only a pleasure.
Was this podcast of value for you? I sure hope so. If so, feel free to share the love and give us your generous review on iTunes or Stitcher. And remember that you can always go to runemagnus.com to find out more about the Changemakers and how we can help you drive the change you want to see in your world.